All ready to go?
I'm good to go.
As
You
ready
fire
as it's
away,
gonna
man.
be?
I've got my e-cig, I got my vape fluid right by. I got a cup of coffee. I got a bottle of water. So I mean, if it gets shitty, then I'll have Karen make me a drink.
This is Tony. I'm Mike, and or welcome to Tony and Mike Watch the World Burn.
Right outside our window.
Look out, there it is. So today we're going to be reviewing First Man into Space from 1959, directed by Robert Day. Three people actually had writing credits on this: John Croydon, Charles F. Vedder, and Wyatt Erdung. I hope I'm pronouncing that.
It's a solid name.
Yes, very solid names. Starring Marshall Thompson as Commander James Ernest Prescott, Bill Edwards as Lieutenant Dan Milton Prescott, Robert Aries as Captain Ben Richards, Marla Landy as Tia Francesca, Bill Nagy as Police Chief Wilson, and Charles Jaffe as Dr. Paul Van Essen. Movie was made on a budget of $131,000 and brought in $635,000 at the box office. So, I mean, it's not a, did okay.
6 times return on your money beats the shit out of a Marvel film.
So,
just saying.
I mean,
no one's complaining about the kind of bank that First Man in Space made.
But I'm sure back then they didn't spend a whole lot of money on advertisements, so I'm sure there was zero in advertising dollars.
I'm going to disagree with you there because I did a little bit of digging in the background of this, and I actually found that there was like big promo posters. There's this very large like 2-sheet ad, and it's like MGM presents First Man in Space, and leaps ahead of the headlines, and then it has like this poster that actually shows like the ascent of the rocket, and then up at the top where it's got the Y-13, which is the name of the experimental spaceship, there's this big question mark in red ink next to it. What happens here? No one knows. See First Man in Space. So trust me, there was some serious advertising going on. There was also lobby cards, and the scans that I saw, they were color, which like in the 70s and 80s, there were still lobby cards that were floating around out there for movies, but they were black and white. So like MGM, they spent some money promoting this, but it's not like they spent money back then on advertising movies like they do now. They probably just threw the trailers at the end of other movies that had come out. See, First Man in Space. And
the entire world awaits the countdown that will send the first living person hurtling into the unexplored mysteries of the universe.
And, they pimped it in the lobbies of their corporately owned movie theaters. But yeah, there was most definitely, they were looking to drum up some business for this one. So the best part about it is when you take a look at the lobby cards and you actually see the full color of the astronaut that's been turned into. He looks like he's made out of hamburger. So, good stuff. I'm just telling you. If you saw the ending of the film, you'll understand that he's best served with cheese.
That's hilarious. I guess in the beginning we're just kind of introduced to our characters. We got Lieutenant Dan. Which the name was crack me up forever.
Wait, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh, we'll get there. We will absolutely get there. Let's get there. I was gonna hold off till we got to the thing. Pun intended. So anyway, we got our main characters, Lieutenant Dan, his brother, what the hell's his name again? James Prescott, yeah. Commander James Prescott. And Captain Ben Richards. So I guess, well, you actually just watched this. I'll let you go through the plot beats, and I'll kind of fill in.
I mean, initially you start off and you have like the first launch, and it's like Oh, what was the name of that? It was like the Glamorous Glennis or whatever it was, the orange plane that was dropped off of the wing of a bomber and shot up into space, and it's
Oh,
very
that's right. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
that footage. And the thing that's funny is like I've seen archival footage of that actual flight before, and it's always like really grainy and shitty looking, and yet the version of that footage that was shown in this film is pristine. It's gorgeous. So, if anybody's looking for some fascinating aviation footage that looks like, it wasn't dragged behind a car before it was shown, this is the place for it. But, so it starts off and they have the initial flight, and apparently, like, he gets up in space and he has some, motor function issues, so he can't quite control the plane, and he gets back down to Earth. He, has a haphazard landing of sorts, and
Right, but then he also like. So why did he have the issues?
apparently they didn't know what would happen when people were in space for the first time. So he was slowing his reflexes and his reaction times. And
Right,
so,
but he wasn't supposed to go that high though.
Take it easy, Dan. We're reaching maximum test height of 300,000 feet. You're in modified atmosphere.
She's riding steady. Feel as though I could go on.
Test your controls and prepare to turn.
Let her go, Chuck. See what you'll do.
anyway, like the big drama of all of the first flight is that he didn't follow orders. And never mind that he's like telling his brother, hey, look, first off, you shouldn't be my commanding officer because there's family baggage there and blah, blah, blah. But let's go with it anyway because, plot. And, well, we got like, this is what serves as character development, because if you watch the two actors, the only thing that they did that was kind of interesting, they don't look anything alike.
No.
They don't have any similar mannerisms. They both have really distinct voices, though. So I guess that makes it easy to follow who's talking shit about who. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing brotherly about them. And then you have like, then you have like what starts. I'm assuming this is like the beginning of the trope of I'm the older brother, I'm responsible, and I do everything on schedule, and you must learn to follow orders. And then the younger brother, who's the maverick, he's Tom Cruise character in our film before Tom Cruise was, a thing. But, so there's like this, like rather than going for his debriefing, he immediately goes and sees his super hot Italian girlfriend, which I understand. Space gets lonely. Elton John said so. But then his brother shows up and like totally cock blocks him when he gets back, and you're gonna show up and we're gonna do that debriefing and blah blah blah.
Hiya, brother. Have a drink.
What the heck's the matter with you? You just wrecked $10 million worth of aircraft, and I find you lollygagging around here. Why aren't you back at the base making out your report?
As a matter of fact, I was just on my way.
Okay, wise guy.
That covers like the first 15 minutes of the film, like this dynamic of like flying in space is hard, and you should follow orders, and yeah, hey, your girlfriend's super hot. And then like the rest of it's kind of a slog for like the next 20 minutes or so. There's not a lot of interesting stuff going on because it's all technobabble, and it's like the 50s that passed for plot. Like rather than actually having like an engaging problem that they were trying to solve or something like that, they were just talking about, the X-27 module, blah, blah. It's like, am I supposed to be excited by this? And I'm sure like back during the beginnings of the space race where everybody was all about the technology, that might have actually been engaging in some way. But in this particular instance, it's just like when you're watching a bad episode of The Next Generation and Geordi LaForge is, and you're just like, yeah, can we get on to lore, like crushing the Enterprise already? So it's crazy boring. The only thing that I thought was really kind of interesting about that was they actually had the balls in 1959 to make the lead scientist and very, very obviously make sure that you knew that he was German. And I thought,
I remember that. I should have watched this beforehand too, just to refresh my memory. No,
But no,
that makes sense though too.
German accent, and it's like, Dr. Drusendorf or whatever his name was.
Listen, Ben. This is Dr. von Essen speaking.
And it's like, okay, that's kind of like America admitting that the space race, like, yeah, it wasn't really American scientists that did all the heavy lifting. They went and got these Germans for a reason.
Yeah, it was pretty ballsy. Yeah, for sure.
So kudos to them for accurately attempting to show that off. And I think that, that might have been like incidental, like when they were there, like renting the videotape of the footage from the actual flights that they ran into the German doctors, and someone was like, I've got a great idea for casting. And that's how that became. I don't know how purposeful or intentional that was, but it works in the context of, historically, you look back, if you know anything about the early space program, you know that, yeah, there was a lot of Germans that we kind of borrowed from the Nazis, and we brought them over here because they knew what they were doing, and that's how we put men on the moon. And so, like I said, that second 15 minutes, complete slog. Then we get to the second flight. And the second flight, he goes up, and he goes past 250. And then there's like communication trouble and all that. And I don't know when you want to start getting into comparisons to some of the more famous.
We'll get there. We're almost there. But I love how fucking, on the first flight, he disobeys orders, goes up higher than he's supposed to. He wants to fucking, hit space and shit. Right. Fucks up the first plane, doesn't bother checking, tries to go get laid, but yet, his brother and then the commander's like, oh, fuck it, who are we gonna have fly the plane? Well, fuck, it's gonna be Dan, of course, why not? What could possibly go wrong? What just fucking happens? He's like, I'm going to fucking space. Fuck you guys, And then he gets there, hits the fucking cosmic storm, gets hit with the cosmic dust, ejects, crash lands, and take it away, Tony.
I was gonna say, well, I mean, he's in space, he's flying around. There's this cosmic storm that he's flying through. It's surprisingly for 1959, the effects are pretty solid. It's I'm not gonna say that it's great special effects, but it's definitely passable. It's serviceable effects, and they don't look terrible. They're not distracting. They're not like oh, nice effect shot there, Bob.
Are you talking about just the effects of
the ship flying
like the White 13 was flying up and that shit?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that actually looked good. The only part that looked out of whack was fucking his control stick was up in his face like this, so he's staring literally like this.
Well, yeah, but even beyond that, and I guess here's the part of this that I kind of find fascinating, is that I'm assuming that was a real flight suit because it did not look like 50s sci-fi. It looked like a real flight.
No, it looked like a legit suit, yeah.
And then the cockpit of the spaceship actually looked legit too. It looked like real hardware. It didn't look like, hey, let's put some blinky lights over here in the.
No, but it was a fucking hockey stick in front of his fucking face,
So that will be why he had the control stick up here like this, was because they were filming in a real cockpit and they couldn't let him fuck with the real stick.
So the camera's at his feet pointing up.
Sure, and hey, Bob, here, hold this up.
Like that to me. It looked like it was straight on. He just had a big fucking stick in his face.
Well, he didn't want to have to look down to fly the plane. So I got nothing I got nothing for you in regards to that. But so the plane crashes, and I think the plane crashes in Mexico.
New Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, it crashes because I remember there's this whole scene with the Mexican ambassador, but I was too busy making fun of how bad that whole scene was to really pay too much attention to it, because he looked like the Mexican diplomat, he looked like a poor man's Dracula, and so it was just I was having a lot of fun with that scene while I was watching it because it was pretty awful. Then so that gets on, and they find the wreckage, and it's got this weird crystalline structure that's impregnated all the metal bits and all that, and then it occurs to them, hey, what if it got into the cockpit of the plane? And I don't know, we have this rock murder machine that's running around, but apparently he can still drive a car. We've had that firmly
Oh, I
established.
forgot about that. He does drive the car.
Well, and pick up a date. Let's not forget that he does, he's not alone in that car when he gets pulled over by the cops. Because apparently, it was the 50s, so, drinking and going for a drive was a perfectly acceptable way to spend your Sunday.
Say, that guy's off course. Yeah, he's loaded okay. Here we go. Hold on, I'm gonna take him.
Okay, I'll handle it.
And turns out that their blood is being drank, and
Right. And he actually goes to one of the first places he stops is an actual blood bank. Yeah, he breaks into the blood bank and smashes all the things of blood, kills the fucking nurse.
and well, he kills her and others.
Yeah.
And like I said, that was like a weird leap. At that point, that was just kind of like one of those. Sure, okay, I guess that's a thing. And
well, they do explain why he needs the blood in there. It's supposedly because he was up so high, got exposed to space, so something in that process, like his body was like deprived of oxygen, so he got his oxygen from the blood.
Yeah, no. I mean, they do come back. They do have an explanation. It's bullshit, but they do have an explanation. So I was getting there. But like they get the creature to go into a hyperbolic chamber, and they're pumping up the atmosphere, and now he's got oxygen in his blood, and he can think and he can speak, and he goes through this big confession where he didn't want to do it, and he just had to be able. And then it just like gets really weird, and then he just like falls over dead, and the best part of the movie for me was when his brother, the responsible one, is leaving, and the hot Italian girlfriend runs up behind him and puts her arm around him as if to say, I like to keep it in the family, and then they roll. So it was magnificent in that regard. Marla, what was her name? Marla Aloni, or
the name of the girlfriend?
Londi, I think. But
the name was Tia Francesca.
Yeah, well, Marla apparently was like one of the biggest international models in the world at the time. I actually did a little research on her. She was like of the 4 biggest models at the time. And so I guess we can thank her for starting the tradition of getting really attractive women that can't act in movies. So, because honestly, like she could not carry a scene if you handed her the script pages. It was really bad. It was almost painful. It's a good thing she was pretty, because she definitely wasn't entertaining to watch.
I knew this would happen. I didn't want him to go on.
Yes, I understand.
How can you understand? To you then it was just a piece of machinery.
No, that's not true.
You wanted him to risk his life.
I had to put Y-13 into space with Dan as a pilot because those are my orders.
Orders.
Tia.
But yeah, so again, the moral message of the story is, it's okay to bone your brother's girlfriend as long as he's dead. That's really the takeaway from all this. And, a future in science will get you sloppy seconds. But at least you know who she was banging. So like I said, it's a weird movie, and what's even weirder about it is that there's a Criterion Collection release of this film. And,
really?
Serve that for
I wouldn't
important.
expect the relevance of this movie to be that high, where it had to be in the Criterion Collection. I don't know.
In 1959, I don't know. I think it was just like one of those movies that is more fondly remembered than it actually is. It's like, there are a lot of movies like that you remember them as a kid going to see them, and you're like, oh, that movie was great, I really loved it. And then you go back and watch it as an adult, and you're like, this is kind of stupid.
I'm also that with like 80s TV shows like fucking Dukes of Hazzard, love as a kid, fucking sucks balls now, 18, all that fucking shit is just fucking awful now.
It really, really is. And the sad part is like, what's always the genuinely good entertainment of a time period is not necessarily the entertainment that survives the test of time.
Right.
I mean, 80s music is a perfect example of that. There's what people right now think was popular in the 80s, but the fact of the matter is like a lot of the stuff that actually was popular back in the 80s has mostly been forgotten about. So now it's like the quirky stuff that's floated to the top. That's what's remembered. Same thing here, I think. Again, I don't understand why they did a Criterion Collection release of this. Maybe they're just like short on decent 50s sci-fi films, but I'm like thinking
it was a very it's like horror movies is now, it wasn't like the genre to be in, it's like, oh, this is where you went if you did B movies and general schlock.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it was still several years away from like, Planet of the Apes and movies like that, like, good stuff. But at the same time, I'm like thinking, I'm not sure on this one, but I'm pretty positive like Forbidden Planet was also an MGM release.
Mm-hmm.
And that had come out, and that was like as big budget as you could possibly get. It was big state-of-the-art effects at the time, and big soundscape and music and top tier acting talent. A very young Leslie Nielsen in that one as the lead on that one, and it was also one of those. It was originally like Shakespeare's The Tempest, I want to say, was the source material for that, and they rewrote it in sci-fi. So I mean, they were going very highbrow with science fiction at the time, and I still love Forbidden Planet. I still watch Forbidden Planet regularly. I have it on Blu-ray, and I still pull it out like once every 8-9 months. I just like, I like that. I want to sit around on a Sunday and have a beer and watch Forbidden Planet because I still really enjoy that movie. I can't imagine watching this movie again if you weren't, oh, hey, we're going to talk about this one. There's nothing there. The only route, can we just get into the...
Yeah, please.
The only thing I can think of that's really culturally relevant about this is that when you and I first sat down and we accidentally happened upon this film and we watched it, I'm like, oh, dude, Stan Lee totally ripped this shit off. This is the origin. This is the origin of the Fantastic Four right here, that they go up and there's a cosmic storm and they come back to Earth and, oh, look, Ben Richards. Oh, where have I heard that name before? Oh, he's suddenly turning into rock. But hey, let's take all the aspects of these characters. Well, we got the hot chick. I know, we'll make her American and we'll make her blonde. And then what happens? When she's in a scene, you can't see her. Oh, okay, I'm following you. So,
not a knock on what's the name's acting and all.
Having just watched it, it's like none of them are great actors, but like they're serviceable. They're definitely periods of their time. There's not an Orson Welles or a Cornell Wilde or even Gene Tierney or a Linda Darnell in there. They're all pretty like, yeah, we do the matinee show. So they are not the before dinner film. They are the, hey, let's send the kids in. So, but I'm just like literally you can watch this movie and if you really like, you don't even have to pay attention. It's so like in your face. And this was what, 4 years before the Fantastic Four debuted? 3 years, something like that. 2
or 3 years.
Yeah. So
plenty of time for somebody that's obviously in the sci-fi, most definitely saw this movie, and could easily have adapted shit from it. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, no, but rather than turning it into a horror themed story, decided this is the origin story for his heroes, and like you got.
Well, they fought. Well, that's not true either, because in the first Fantastic Four comics, they were space monsters. That's what they fought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So no, it's even more connected than you actually initially thought. Other than
there
this
you
is the
go.
origin of the characters, but then also these people fight creatures from space. Well, they're not fighting themselves, obviously.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
still.
So, but no, I just like I said, that was like the initial, like we watched it, and that was the initial like, whoa, hey, wait, is this the movie that Stan Lee ripped off? Because if you know a lot about comics and you actually saw like some of the characters that Stan Lee created, there's some pretty blatant ripoffs in there, So
So I don't think we actually described this yet. What Lieutenant Dan looked like? He basically was the thing. He was covered in rock and shit like that from the cosmic dust from the storm. Except for he was like way deformed and shit. And actually they redid this movie in '71 and called it The Melting Man. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. As I've seen The Melting Man.
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm sure that probably looks. I bet if you watch that, it probably looks even more like The Thing.
I have seen it.
Oh, have you?
And the reason I've seen it is because it's an episode of MST3K.
Oh, no shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, right on.
It is an episode of MST3K, and it is a far more visceral movie. So remember I was saying like the creature looked like he was made out of hamburger patties. Well, in this one he looks like he's just raw processed meat in this one. So it's a bit grosser, but it's not. The MST3K version is definitely entertaining. I will give it kudos. It's one of their. I want to say it was one of their later movies. So I want to say it was Mike that was doing the riffing on that one. So I'm a big MST3K fan. I actually really enjoyed that particular episode of MST3K. I didn't realize that it was the origin or that it was a remake or a reimagining, I guess, of First Man in Space, but I kind of see it now that you say that. But yeah, it just so I guess at the end of the day, Criterion decided to put this out because they consider it an influential film. Is that your
guess is mine? I have no idea. I mean, it's not like I said, it's not a bad movie. There's absolutely nothing offensive about any of it. Like I said, the acting's serviceable, the plot does its job, and it was as good as any schlock they were throwing out in the 50s anyway. So, I mean, and again, it's not a bad movie.
No,
it's not a good movie. It's just not bad.
Like, I could get, like I said, I get where it could be like some young kid, and it's summertime, and he goes and he sees this, and he's all hopped up on, the space program because it's 1959, and mom's got to go do some grocery shopping, and he like goes and sees this like for a nickel 3 weekends in a row while she's like out like getting turkey and ham. And I can understand that. I can understand why there's a nostalgia factor, and I can also understand that if you're young enough when you see this to remember it, but then like time chips away at wears the veneer down to where you don't remember the rough patches. You just remember like the cool parts about it. I can see where it would be fondly remembered, but I'm just going to tell you that having seen it at my age, I'm not going to fondly remember it. I'm going to look back and go, oh, that movie's a piece of shit. I only throw on The Melting Man. It's got robots in the bottom right-hand corner, and they're funny. So, is there anything else to say about this?
Not really.
The First Man in Space should be the last movie you watch. So, that's what I got. Unless you're
that's absolutely wrong. It should not be the last movie you watch.
if you're 70 years old and you're having a nostalgic afternoon, go for it. If you're anywhere younger than that, if you were not alive when this movie was put out and have no fond memories of it, move on to something better. Go watch Forbidden Planet. Go watch War of the Worlds. I mean, those are all contemporaries of this, and they're infinitely more entertaining than this. Hell, go watch King Kong or Mighty Joe Young. Just anything other than it. Appreciate it for what it is, but just read the cliff notes. So,
I think you pretty much hit it on the head as far as like any real pop culture significance of any kind whatsoever is the fact that, yeah, it obviously was the genesis for the Fantastic Four, and beyond that, fuck it.
This is a George Lucas situation. They have their idea guy, and they need to let someone else rewrite it. I guess. Thanks, Stanley. I mean, I'm not a Fantastic Four fan, but I get it. I'm not going to poo-poo on anybody else. The Green Lantern Corps is cooler, and that's what I got to say about that. So join us next time when I tell Mike my theory on The Sopranos.
See you guys next episode. Have a good one.
Peace.